The ship drifted silently through the blackness of space. Stars twinkled coldly, distant and indifferent, while the human crew of the intrepid Dawn went about their routine checks. Marcus Hale moved quietly through the corridors, a steady rhythm of boots on metal echoing behind him. Unlike most of his fellow soldiers, he did not talk to anyone. Not because he disliked them, but because he had learned that silence was easier than explaining what he was beginning to hear. It started a few weeks ago. While the ship passed near the Zirath Dominion's outer sector, the other soldiers said it was nothing, just the hum of the ship or the lingering effects of space radiation. But Marcus knew it was something else. A voice, or more like a scream, reached him in moments of quiet. He had first dismissed it as imagination, the strain of endless patrols and long shifts. But the sound persisted. It was low, desperate, almost melodic in its terror, and it seemed to come from everywhere at once. During one of his night shifts, when the corridors were almost empty, Marcus pressed his hand against the cold metal wall and closed his eyes. The sound rose stronger now, reverberating through his mind. It was pain, deep and raw, not just fear or anger. It was pleading, calling out, begging for someone to notice. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Every fiber of his being told him to go, to retreat and forget it. But something stronger, something human, told him to follow it. He traced the sound through the ship down to a maintenance hatch that led to a sector labeled Restricted. Zirath Containment. A warning flashed red above the door, but Marcus did not hesitate. While the rest of the crew ignored the alerts, he could not. He opened the hatch quietly and slipped into the narrow tunnel. The hum of the ship faded behind him, replaced by the scream. It grew louder, more urgent. Marcus's heart pounded. He had never been someone who believed in ghosts or strange phenomena, but this felt real. The screams carried weight, sorrow, and a strange sense of loneliness that made the hair on his arms stand. The walls of the tunnel seemed to stretch endlessly, twisting and bending in ways that were almost unnatural. Yet Marcus pressed on, step by careful step. Finally, he reached a massive, sealed chamber. The door was far larger than anything he had seen, engraved with alien symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. Behind it, the sound of the screams was unbearable. Marcus could not move, frozen for a moment, staring at the door. He felt a strange connection, as though the voice somehow knew him, called for him by name even though he had never spoken it aloud. With a trembling hand, he activated the door panel. The lock hissed and clicked, and the door slid open with a sound like tearing silk. Inside, the room was vast, stretching higher than the eye could see. Shadows flickered against the walls, moving as if alive. In the center, floating slightly above the ground, was a figure. She was unlike any human, yet there was something unmistakably alive about her. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her hair floated around her head like a dark halo. Her eyes were closed, but Marcus felt her gaze pierce him as if she could see into his soul. Her hands were pressed to her temples, trembling, and her lips moved, forming sounds that made his heart ache. She was crying, but no tears fell. Her screams were psychic, echoes of her pain reaching into every corner of the chamber, and Marcus could feel it. Not just hear it, feel it. Every nerve in his body screamed in sympathy. He wanted to run, to flee from this overwhelming force, but he could not. He stepped closer, his voice barely audible. I can hear you." The sound stopped for a brief moment. The figure's head snapped toward him and her eyes opened. They were dark, deep pools of anguish and ancient knowledge. Marcus stumbled back slightly, overwhelmed. Her gaze was not angry, not violent, but full of sorrow, as if she carried the weight of 1,000 lifetimes. "You hear me?" she whispered, her voice vibrating in his mind rather than his ears. Finally, someone. Marcus swallowed hard, his mouth dry. Who are you?" "I am Solara," she said, voice trembling. "The vampire queen of the Zirath, caged, forgotten, left to suffer while the galaxy thrives in ignorance. All my people are bound, all my power taken, and no one listens. No one cares." He took a cautious step forward. Why are you here? Why are you screaming?" Solara's eyes filled with a light, an almost imperceptible shimmer of hope. "Because someone might, finally. Because humans are strange. You feel things others ignore. You notice things others do not. You hear cries that others call madness." Marcus's stomach twisted. "Humans, you know humans." She let out a weak laugh, sad and hollow. "I know enough. You are the first to truly listen. Others, they hear only noise, but you hear meaning. And meaning matters. For a long moment, Marcus simply stood there overwhelmed. Every part of him screamed to run. He had been trained to obey, to follow orders, to ignore the impossible. But every instinct in his body, the one that made humans survive when others could not, told him to stay. I want to help, he said finally. Solara's eyes widened. Help? You cannot comprehend what that means. The Dominion will not allow it. They have taken everything from me. You could be the first to restore even a fragment of freedom. Marcus swallowed again. I'll try, that's all I can promise. Her laughter returned, faint, almost a sigh. That is enough. It is more than anyone else has done in centuries. The chamber was silent for a while except for the faint hum of the containment systems. Marcus realized that if he left, no one would believe him. They would call him mad or worse. But that did not matter. He had heard her. That was enough for now. He took another step closer, studying her more carefully. Chains, thin but glowing with energy, bound her wrists and ankles. The technology holding her captive was alien, centuries ahead of anything humans had seen. Yet Marcus noticed small flaws, tiny imperfections that a careful hand might exploit. His mind, trained in tactics and problem-solving, began to work quietly, calculating every possible move. You are thinking of freeing me, Solara said, almost as if reading his mind. Do you know what that means? If I escape, the Dominion will hunt you. If I fail, you will die. If you fail, everyone will die. Marcus nodded slowly. I know, but I can't ignore this. I won't. She studied him for a long moment, her eyes searching his, as if weighing the truth of his words against the lies of centuries. Finally, she nodded. Then you are the first human worth my trust, and I have very little left to give. Marcus felt a chill run through him, not fear, but a strange mixture of awe and determination. He had faced impossible missions before, situations where the odds were against him. But this was different. This was not about orders, strategy, or survival alone. This was about being human, about choosing to act when others did not. The chamber began to hum louder, and Marcus realized the containment fields were responding to their interaction. Her power, suppressed for centuries, pulsed faintly in response to his presence. It was as if the very act of listening, of acknowledging her pain, was enough to awaken something deep inside her. He took another step, carefully. Tell me, how do I help? Solara closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, there was a spark of life, a faint hope that had been absent before. First you survive this night, she said softly. Then we begin. But beware, human. The galaxy does not forgive those who defy the Dominion. Marcus felt the weight of her words, heavy and real. Yet for the first time in his life, he did not hesitate. He had heard her cries, understood her suffering, and chosen to act. Whatever came next, he knew one thing. He was not just a soldier. He was the one who listened when everyone else turned away, and that, he realized, was enough to change everything. The corridor smelled of metal and recycled air as Marcus Hale led Solara through the abandoned maintenance tunnels. The dim lights flickered intermittently, casting long shadows that danced across the walls like silent specters. Every step echoed in the narrow passageways, yet the galaxy beyond the ship seemed impossibly quiet, as if it held its breath, waiting to see what would happen. Marcus felt the weight of the chains that had once bound Solara in his mind. Each link had been a testament to centuries of suffering, and now he carried the responsibility to free her completely. Solara floated silently beside him. Her movements were precise, almost otherworldly, yet graceful, as if she had trained her body to obey only the lightest command. She had stopped screaming, but Marcus could still feel the remnants of her pain vibrating through the air, like distant thunder before a storm. He knew that the Dominion security forces would be quick to notice any disturbance, and he could not afford mistakes. Every second counted. Are you always this quiet? Solara asked, her voice soft but direct, echoing faintly in his mind. Marcus shook his head. No, but I've learned that sometimes silence says more than words. She tilted her head, studying him. Silence? Humans are strange creatures. You listen when others ignore. You act when others hesitate. And yet you rarely speak of what you feel. Why? He hesitated, then replied. Because most people wouldn't understand. And sometimes feelings make you weak. Out here you need focus, control. Her eyes narrowed slightly, a faint smile brushing her lips. Weakness, you say, perhaps. Or perhaps it is your weakness that makes you strong. You hear what others do not. You feel what others suppress. That is why you are here, human. That is why I trust you. Marcus felt a shiver run down his spine. Trust from someone like Solara was not easily given. She was ancient, intelligent, and had survived centuries in captivity. Yet despite her suffering, she had chosen to rely on him. That realization made him both proud and terrified. As they reached a junction in the tunnels, Marcus paused, pressing his back against the wall. Ahead, a security drone floated silently, its sensors glowing faint red as it scanned the corridor. Marcus held up a hand, signaling Solara to stop. The drone's mechanical hum was almost hypnotic, and Marcus felt his pulse quicken. "We can't fight it," he whispered. "Not head-on. We need to distract it." Solara's eyes glinted with curiosity. "Distract? You plan to deceive a machine built to kill?" Marcus gave a faint shrug. "Humans are good at that." He took a small metal rod from his pocket and tossed it down a side corridor. The rod clanged against the wall and bounced, drawing the drone's attention. Its sensors shifted, scanning the noise. Marcus motioned for Solara to follow, and they slipped quietly down the opposite path. He could feel her studying him, and he wondered what she was thinking. Was she judging his abilities, or simply observing how fragile yet determined humans could be? The tunnels twisted and turned, winding like a labyrinth designed to confuse intruders. Marcus had memorized parts of the ship's schematics, but the Dominion's influence made navigation unpredictable. At one point, a section of the floor shifted beneath them, revealing a trap designed to drop anyone into a containment pit. Marcus caught Solara just in time, his hand gripping hers with surprising strength. "You are stronger than you look," Solara said, a hint of admiration in her voice. "And you're lighter than I expected," Marcus replied, trying to mask his tension with humor. She gave a soft laugh, a sound that resonated with genuine relief. For a moment, the fear and despair of the situation lifted, replaced by an unusual companionship. They finally reached a door that led to the ship's lower decks, where the containment systems were centralized. Marcus studied the panel carefully. It was complex, filled with alien symbols and holographic readouts that shifted constantly. Any mistake could trigger alarms, alerting every security officer on the ship. He felt sweat bead on his forehead but forced himself to stay calm. Solara extended a hand toward the panel. "I can help," she said softly, "but my strength is limited. I have been drained for centuries. I can guide you, but the work must be yours." Marcus nodded, appreciating her honesty. Together, they began to manipulate the controls. The holographic interface was unlike anything Marcus had seen. It pulsed and changed as if alive, resisting their attempts. He had to think like the system, anticipate its responses. Solara murmured guidance in his mind, a quiet stream of knowledge that he had to translate into action. Hours seemed to pass, though it was likely only minutes. Marcus's fingers moved quickly, following patterns Solara suggested. Finally, with a low hum, the locks disengaged and the containment fields began to flicker. Chains of energy that had bound Solara for centuries fell away, evaporating into faint sparks. Solara took a deep breath, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in decades. "Freedom. It feels strange," she whispered, "yet also terrifying. I have lived in chains for so long that I fear what will come next." "You won't face it alone," Marcus said firmly. "We'll figure it out together." Her gaze softened, and for a moment she seemed almost human, vulnerable and fragile. Marcus felt a protective instinct surge through him. Humans were wired to care for others, to protect the weak, to act even when the odds were against them. And here, in the middle of enemy territory, he was putting that instinct to the ultimate test. Their escape, however, was far from over. As they moved through the lower decks, alarms suddenly blared. Red lights flashed across the walls, and mechanical voices announced security breaches throughout the ship. Marcus's stomach sank. They had triggered a failsafe. "Run!" he shouted, taking Solara's hand again. "We need to reach the docking bay before they trap us." They sprinted down the corridors, dodging security drones and patrols. Solara moved with grace, her powers allowing her to evade sensors and obstacles with ease. Marcus relied on strategy, improvising paths and distractions to stay ahead of their pursuers. They had become a team, their strengths complementing each other in ways neither had expected. At one point, a squad of Dominion soldiers appeared at the end of the corridor. Marcus grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and activated it, creating a dense cloud of smoke. The soldiers shouted, waving weapons blindly, while Marcus and Solara slipped past, emerging into a maintenance lift that carried them to the surface of the ship. The docking bay stretched before them, illuminated by faint starlight streaming through the windows. The human ship they had come in on was there, waiting, but the path was heavily guarded. Marcus's mind raced, calculating options, weighing risks. Solara placed a hand on his shoulder. "Do not overthink," she said. "Trust your instincts as you have trusted me." He nodded. Together they moved forward, blending strategy with speed. The guards were formidable, but Marcus had something the Dominion had underestimated: unpredictability. Humans did not follow patterns. They adapted, improvised, and used their surroundings to their advantage. Using a combination of quick thinking and Solara's subtle psychic influence, they created chaos in the docking bay, giving themselves a narrow window to reach the ship. As they boarded the human vessel, Marcus activated the engines and lifted off, the Dominion fleet behind them beginning to respond to the alarms. Solara looked out at the stars, her face a mixture of awe and sorrow. "The galaxy has changed," she murmured. "And yet it has not." Marcus kept his eyes on the stars ahead. "It will, and humans will be part of that change." Solara turned to him, her expression unreadable. "You are remarkable, human. I have seen civilizations rise and fall, and yet here you are, one soldier listening, acting. Perhaps the galaxy has hope after all." Marcus smiled faintly, though his body ached from the chase. "Hope isn't given. It's earned. And sometimes it's found in places no one else thinks to look." The ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the Dominion fleet behind. Marcus and Solara stood together on the deck, two unlikely allies against an entire empire. And though the path ahead was uncertain, they shared something stronger than fear: trust, determination, and the unshakable knowledge that humans could make a difference where all others had failed. For the first time, Marcus realized that empathy, something so simple, so human, could become the most powerful weapon in the galaxy. Solara had suffered for centuries, ignored by all, but he had listened, and that listening had begun a journey that could change everything. As the stars streaked past the viewport, Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. The Dominion would not rest. They would come after Solara, after him, after anyone who defied their control. But for now he allowed himself a moment of calm, a brief pause to recognize what he had accomplished. He had answered a scream when no one else would. And in doing so, he had ignited the first spark of rebellion that might one day free an entire galaxy. The stars streaked past the viewport of the intrepid Dawn as Marcus Hale and Solara stood in the command room. The ship hummed softly, the engines vibrating underfoot, but the silence between them was tense. Marcus studied the stars, calculating their next move. The Dominion would not let Solara escape so easily, and they would come for them with overwhelming force. Every human in the galaxy knew the Dominion's reputation: efficient, merciless, and cunning. Solara floated slightly above the deck, her eyes closed, sensing the currents of energy around the ship. "They are coming," she said finally, her voice calm yet warning-laden. "The Dominion will not forgive my escape. They will pursue relentlessly, and they will not stop until I am returned or destroyed." Marcus nodded, feeling the familiar tightness in his chest. "We'll need a plan. We can't outrun them forever, and we can't fight them head-on." He turned to study her, realizing that despite the centuries of captivity, she was powerful. But that power had limits. "I don't know your full abilities yet, but we'll have to use them carefully." Solara opened her eyes, which glimmered with a faint violet light. "My strength has been drained for centuries. Alone I am weak, but with you, your human instincts, your unpredictability, we can survive. Perhaps even turn the odds in our favor." Marcus swallowed, a mixture of pride and anxiety rising in him. Humans had always survived against impossible odds, not because of their strength, but because they adapted. They improvised, they felt, and now in the darkness of space, with an ancient being at his side, Marcus understood the weight of what they could accomplish together. Their first move was to find a safe location to hide and regroup. The Dominion fleet was vast, far larger than anything humanity could match directly. Marcus suggested an uncharted asteroid belt he had studied in the system's outer rim. It was dangerous, with massive rocks moving unpredictably, but it provided natural cover and confusion. "We can hide there," he said. "It's risky, but the Dominion will have difficulty tracking us." Solara nodded. "Good. We will need every advantage we can muster." The journey to the asteroid belt was tense. The Dominion had already dispatched reconnaissance drones which monitored the human ship's trajectory. Marcus used every trick he knew: evasive maneuvers, sudden course changes, and subtle electronic interference. Solara assisted by subtly amplifying the ship's energy signatures, masking their presence without triggering alarms. It was delicate work, each mistake potentially fatal. After hours of careful navigation, they reached the asteroid belt. Giant rocks drifted in irregular orbits, colliding occasionally with deafening crashes that shook the nearby debris. Marcus maneuvered the ship through narrow gaps, careful not to scrape the hull. Solara extended her senses, alerting him to every movement, every fluctuation in energy. Together, they worked in perfect sync. They had found temporary safety, but Marcus knew the Dominion would not give up easily. He studied the stars, searching for patterns in the fleet's movement. "They'll come," he said quietly. "And next time they'll bring more than drones." Solara's expression hardened. "Then we must be ready. You have done well so far, human, but survival requires more than skill. It requires courage, and a willingness to act when others hesitate. Can you do that?" Marcus met her gaze. "I've done it before. I'll do it again." Over the next few days, they repaired the intrepid Dawn and prepared for what was coming. Solara taught Marcus to anticipate energy fluctuations and read patterns in alien technology. He learned quickly, using his human intuition in ways Solara found impressive. Yet every night he lay awake, listening for the faint hum in the ship, feeling the tension that came with knowing the Dominion was hunting them. One morning, alarms blared. Marcus rushed to the command deck and Solara followed. Outside, the asteroid belt was suddenly lit by a massive Dominion warship, its sensors scanning every rock and crevice. Smaller fighter ships emerged, surrounding them like a predator closing in on prey. Marcus's stomach tightened, but he did not panic. "Remember what I taught you," Solara said, her voice calm. "Use the environment. Use your instincts. And do not underestimate them." Marcus nodded. "We're ready. Let's make them regret following us." The battle began with sudden intensity. The Dominion fighters darted between asteroids, firing energy beams that lit the dark void with violent flashes. Marcus piloted the ship with precision, weaving between rocks and using the shadows of the belt to hide. Solara amplified the ship's energy signature, creating illusions that made it appear as though the intrepid Dawn had split into multiple vessels. The Dominion fighters fired at phantoms, wasting their attacks. Marcus smiled faintly. Humans had survived worse odds by improvising, and this was no different. "Keep it up," he shouted. "They'll fall for it every time." Solara's psychic presence added a new dimension. She extended her senses, predicting the fighters' movements, sending Marcus warnings in fractions of a second. Together, they turned the hunters into the hunted. One by one, Dominion fighters collided with asteroids or with each other, and the warship itself struggled to maintain control in the chaotic field. But the Dominion was relentless. A new wave of ships emerged, larger and better equipped, forcing Marcus to push the ship to its limits. Energy shields flickered, warning lights flashed, and every system strained under the pressure. Solara's strength was waning, her centuries-long exhaustion catching up to her despite her resolve. Marcus realized that sheer cleverness and skill alone would not be enough. He needed something more, something unexpected. "Solara," he shouted over the comms, "I need your help. Really push yourself. Trust me." Her eyes met his, and he saw the faintest glimmer of hope mixed with fear. "I trust you, human. But know this, if I fail, we both die." Marcus nodded. "I know. But we survive together, or not at all." Solara extended her hands, her psychic energy flaring. The ship shook violently as waves of force rippled outward, disabling nearby fighters and causing electrical systems in the Dominion warship to overload. Sparks flew, lights flickered, and alarms screamed. Marcus seized the moment, piloting the intrepid Dawn through a narrow gap in the asteroid field, moving faster than anyone could anticipate. The Dominion fleet was caught off guard. Ships collided, weapons misfired, and the larger warship struggled to regain control. Marcus's heart pounded, but he remained focused, trusting his instincts and Solara's guidance. Together they created chaos, turning their pursuers into a fractured, disorganized mess. After what felt like hours but was likely only minutes, the Dominion ships retreated, forced to regroup and reconsider their strategy. Marcus and Solara hovered in the quiet aftermath, the asteroid belt now peaceful again. Solara sank slightly, exhausted, her energy nearly spent. "You are remarkable human," she whispered. "I have fought for centuries and seen countless beings. None have your ingenuity, your determination. You inspire hope, even in the darkest circumstances." Marcus shook his head, still gripping the controls. "It's not me alone. It's you two. Together we can survive anything." She looked at him, her gaze intense and unwavering. "Perhaps humanity is different than I believed. Perhaps your kind is capable of things even you do not realize. Your empathy, your courage. It is not weakness. It is strength." Marcus felt a warmth in his chest. Humans had always survived because of their ability to care, to act when others failed, to adapt. Solara's words confirmed what he had always known. Humanity's greatest weapon was not firepower or technology. It was heart, mind and spirit combined. Yet even as they celebrated their small victory, Marcus knew this was only the beginning. The Dominion would not stop, and the galaxy was vast and full of dangers beyond comprehension. Solara's freedom was fragile, their alliance new, and every choice they made could have far-reaching consequences. But Marcus felt ready. He had answered a call when no one else would. He had listened, acted, and survived. And now, with Solara by his side, he was prepared to face whatever the Dominion and the galaxy threw at them next. As the stars stretched endlessly beyond the viewport, Marcus allowed himself a moment of reflection. Humanity had survived wars, plagues, and impossible odds on countless worlds. Now, in the void of space, they had a chance to prove themselves once more. And Marcus Hale, a single human soldier who had chosen to listen when everyone else ignored the cries, understood one truth more clearly than ever. Survival was not enough. To change the galaxy, they needed to act, to inspire, and to fight for what others had abandoned. Solara floated beside him, her presence both a reminder of the stakes and a testament to their growing bond. Together they would face the Dominion, defy impossible odds, and perhaps ignite a spark of hope that could spread across the stars. For the first time in centuries, Solara smiled, a faint, weary smile, but real, and Marcus knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would test every ounce of courage, ingenuity, and humanity he possessed. The asteroid belt had grown quiet again, but Marcus Hale knew that silence meant nothing. The Dominion was regrouping, preparing to strike harder and faster. Outside the viewport, distant warships glimmered faintly in the void, waiting to close in. Marcus stood at the command deck, his hands gripping the controls, eyes scanning the stars, calculating every possibility. Solara floated beside him, her expression unreadable, her pale face reflecting the dim light of the ship. "They will return," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "And next time they will not come alone. Their fleets will be larger, their attacks more calculated. They have learned from their mistakes." Marcus nodded, feeling the familiar knot of tension tighten in his stomach. "Then we learn too. We can't just survive, we have to strike back. We can't wait for them to make the first move." Solara's eyes glimmered with faint violet light, a sign that she was channeling the last remnants of her strength. "You understand strategy, human, but do you understand what it means to fight not just for survival but for freedom? For the lives of others who cannot fight for themselves?" Marcus met her gaze steadily. "I do. That's why we're doing this. Not just for me or for you, but for everyone they would destroy." Over the next hours they planned. The intrepid Dawn was small compared to the Dominion fleet, but Marcus and Solara had an advantage the Dominion could not predict. Human unpredictability combined with Solara's ancient knowledge. They studied the fleet's projected movements, anticipating their strategies, and devised a plan to strike at the heart of the Dominion's supply lines. Solara taught Marcus how to sense energy fluctuations in real time, how to detect weak points in the enemy ship's shields, and how to manipulate the battlefield using his intuition. Marcus absorbed everything quickly, adapting human ingenuity to alien power. He realized that humans had survived wars not by matching strength, but by thinking differently, by noticing opportunities others overlooked. When the moment came, Marcus piloted the ship into the Dominion supply corridor, a narrow pathway between massive asteroid clusters and derelict stations. The corridor was dangerous, but it was also their advantage. The Dominion warships, heavily armed but slow to react, would be vulnerable in such confined space. Solara focused her psychic energy, amplifying Marcus's awareness of incoming threats. Together they moved with precision, weaving through the corridor, avoiding debris and hidden mines. Marcus fired the ship's weapons at key supply depots, creating explosions that cascaded down the path, forcing the Dominion ships to scatter. "Keep going," Solara urged. "Target the engines and supply cores. Do not allow them to regroup." Marcus's fingers flew over the controls, timing every shot, every maneuver with perfect accuracy. He felt the thrill of battle, but also the weight of responsibility. Every action could save lives or doom them. As they progressed, the Dominion counterattacked with fighter swarms and energy beams. Marcus and Solara worked as one, combining human intuition with Solara's psychic foresight. She manipulated the enemy sensors, causing confusion and misfires, while Marcus used the chaos to navigate and strike. One by one, the enemy fighters were destroyed, and the supply depots erupted in flames. But victory was not without cost. A sudden explosion rocked the ship, sending Marcus and Solara tumbling. Sparks flew across the control room as alarms blared. Marcus gritted his teeth, forcing himself to focus. "Damage report," he shouted. Solara's eyes glowed as she assessed the situation. "Shields are at 50%. Weapons are partially offline. We cannot sustain another direct attack. We must escape or risk total destruction." Marcus took a deep breath, his mind racing. "Then we improvise. Humans survive because we adapt. Follow my lead." He guided the intrepid Dawn into a nearby asteroid cluster, using the massive rocks as cover. The Dominion fleet pursued, firing blindly at shadows and illusions Solara created. Marcus's heart pounded as he piloted through the twisting passages, narrowly avoiding collisions. Each maneuver required split-second decisions, relying on instinct, skill, and trust in Solara's guidance. At one point, a Dominion warship appeared directly in their path. Marcus's eyes widened. There was no time to evade. He glanced at Solara. "Now," he shouted. Solara focused all her remaining energy, sending a wave of psychic force that destabilized the enemy ship's systems. Its weapons misfired, shields flickered, and engines faltered. Marcus seized the moment, navigating the intrepid Dawn past it at impossible speed. The warship struggled to regain control, giving them the precious seconds they needed to escape deeper into the asteroid belt. They finally reached a relatively safe zone, where the density of asteroids made it nearly impossible for the Dominion to pursue without heavy risk. Marcus exhaled, his body trembling from the adrenaline. Solara floated silently beside him, her eyes closed, catching her breath. "You did well, human," she said quietly. "I have seen many battles, many soldiers. Few have your courage, your ability to adapt. You are remarkable." Marcus shook his head, still gripping the controls. "I couldn't have done it without you. We're a team. That's how we survive." Solara opened her eyes, and for the first time, Marcus saw a faint smile. "Perhaps humans are not so weak after all. Perhaps your kind is capable of more than I imagined." They spent the next day repairing the ship and planning their next move. The Dominion would not stay idle for long. Marcus knew that their temporary victory only bought them time. They needed allies, strategy, and information if they were to survive the inevitable retaliation. Solara spoke softly as they worked. "There are others like me, prisoners of the Dominion. Some still alive, some long forgotten. We could free them, create a force they cannot ignore." Marcus considered her words. "It's risky, but it's also our chance to make a real difference. Not just survival, but change." She nodded. "Yes, the galaxy has seen centuries of oppression. Perhaps it is time something acts differently. Time for humans to show what courage and compassion can do." As night fell, they looked out over the asteroid field, the stars distant and cold, but full of potential. Marcus felt a strange sense of calm amidst the tension. Humans had survived impossible odds before. They had rebuilt from nothing, adapted, and overcome. Now in the void of space, with Solara by his side, he knew they could do it again. Suddenly, Solara stiffened, her gaze snapping toward a point in the darkness. "They are returning," she whispered. "The main fleet. They have not forgotten us." Marcus felt the familiar surge of adrenaline. "Then we prepare. No matter what, we fight, not just for survival, but for freedom." Solara's eyes glimmered with a fierce determination, her psychic energy pulsing faintly around her. "Then let them come. They will see that even the smallest human can ignite the greatest change." The stars outside seemed to shimmer as the Dominion fleet approached, massive and menacing, their weapons ready. Marcus and Solara stood together, ready to face the coming storm. The human soldier, who had listened when everyone else ignored, was now preparing to lead a fight that could change the galaxy. And as the first enemy ships emerged from the void, Marcus understood the truth that had carried him this far. Humans survive. Not because they are strongest, but because they never stop trying. Because they adapt, improvise, and act when others would freeze, and now, that human determination would be tested against one of the galaxy's most powerful empires. Solara's hand hovered near his shoulder, a silent promise that they would face it together. Marcus tightened his grip on the controls, his jaw set, his mind clear. The battle ahead would be the hardest of their lives. But they were ready. The Dominion was coming, and Marcus Hale, human soldier, would ensure that they would regret underestimating him and the unexpected ally who had trusted him. The Dominion fleet loomed in the void, massive and merciless. Its warships glinted faintly in the starlight, each one a fortress armed to destroy anything in its path. Marcus Hale stood at the command deck of the intrepid Dawn, gripping the controls tightly. His chest ached with tension, but his mind was sharp. He had faced impossible odds before, but never like this. Never with the fate of so many hanging in the balance. Solara floated beside him, pale and luminous, her violet eyes glowing with determination. Though weakened from previous battles, she radiated a quiet strength, a presence that reminded Marcus of why he had chosen to listen in the first place. Together they had survived ambushes, evaded fleets, and struck fear into the Dominion's forces. Now the final confrontation was here. "They are well prepared," Solara said, her voice calm but resolute. "They have learned from our previous encounters. This will not be easy." Marcus nodded. "I know, but we can't wait. We have no choice but to fight and end this. They've already enslaved too many. It's time someone stood against them." Solara's gaze softened. "Humans are strange, Marcus. You act with courage not because you are strong, but because you care. That is what makes you formidable." Marcus gave a faint smile. "Then let's show them what humans are capable of." The intrepid Dawn surged forward, weaving through the remnants of asteroids, approaching the heart of the Dominion fleet. Marcus used every tactic they had practiced, every trick Solara had taught him. They targeted supply lines, disabled communications, and created confusion within the enemy ranks. The Dominion ships, while powerful, were unprepared for a combination of human ingenuity and Solara's psychic abilities. Solara extended her senses, reaching out to detect the enemy fleet's weak points. "Their shields are strong," she said, "but their formations are rigid. They cannot adapt quickly. You must strike at their engines and command ships. Disrupt them and the rest will falter." Marcus nodded, his fingers moving quickly over the controls. He fired precise energy blasts, targeting critical points Solara indicated. The explosions lit the dark void with sudden brilliance, sending debris and shrapnel flying into nearby enemy ships. Dominion fighters collided with the wreckage, causing further chaos. Despite the success, the Dominion responded quickly. A massive warship detached from the main fleet, advancing toward them with overwhelming firepower. Marcus felt the ship shudder as energy beams grazed the hull. "We can't hold them off for long," he shouted. Solara's eyes flared. "We don't need to hold them off. We need to outsmart them. Trust your instincts, Marcus. Humans survive because you adapt when others cannot." Marcus took a deep breath, focusing on the patterns of the enemy ships. He noticed a rhythm in their attacks, a slight delay in response times. "Solara, follow my lead," he said. "We'll use the asteroids as shields and trap their command ship. Then we strike at the core." Solara nodded, her psychic energy pulsing in response. Together, they guided the intrepid Dawn through a series of narrow passes between massive rocks. The Dominion warship pursued, firing relentlessly, but Marcus anticipated every move, using the asteroids as cover. Solara manipulated energy flows to create illusions, making it appear as though the human ship had split into multiple vessels. The enemy fired at shadows, wasting precious energy and time. Finally, they reached the perfect position. The command ship was exposed, its shields weakened by previous attacks and the confusion of illusions. Marcus seized the moment. "Now, Solara." She focused all her remaining energy, sending a wave of psychic force that rippled across the enemy ship. Systems failed, weapons went offline, and engines stuttered. Marcus fired a concentrated blast directly at the ship's core. The explosion was massive, shaking the surrounding fleet and sending debris flying in every direction. For a brief moment, silence fell. The Dominion command ship was destroyed. The remaining fleet faltered, confused and disoriented. Marcus and Solara floated among the asteroids, catching their breath, realizing the impact of what they had done. "You did it," Solara whispered, awe in her voice. "You, human, and your courage. It changed the course of this battle." Marcus shook his head, exhausted but determined. "It wasn't just me. It's humanity. We survive because we don't give up, even when everyone else has turned away. And we fight because we care." Solara looked at him, her expression softening. "Then perhaps it is time the galaxy understood what humans are capable of. Not just survival, but inspiration, hope, change." Over the next hours, they moved through the remnants of the Dominion fleet, liberating smaller ships and rescuing prisoners. Solara's knowledge and Marcus's leadership allowed them to coordinate attacks efficiently, turning fear into courage among the freed crews. Word began to spread across space channels and communication relays. Humans had stood against the Dominion. Humans had listened when everyone else ignored the cries for help. The Dominion, realizing their empire had been challenged, began to retreat, their ships scattered and their command broken. Marcus and Solara watched the retreating fleet, understanding that the battle was won. But the war was far from over. Solara floated beside him, exhausted but resolute. "The galaxy will remember this day, Marcus Hale. Humanity will be known not just for survival, but for courage, for listening, for acting when others would not." Marcus exhaled, relief and pride washing over him. "We did what we had to. That's all we can ever do." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting centuries of pain and newfound hope. "You are remarkable, human. Perhaps it is time for the oppressed to rise, for the silence to speak, and for the forgotten to be heard. And it begins with you." Marcus felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. Humans had always survived because they adapted, because they cared, because they acted when others froze. And now, in the vast expanse of space with Solara by his side, he realized that humanity's greatest strength was not just survival. It was the ability to inspire change, to ignite hope, to fight for what was right. Even when all seemed lost, the two of them looked out over the stars, their bodies weary but their spirits unbroken. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, full of danger and possibility. Marcus understood that the journey ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but he also knew this: humans could make a difference. And he had proven that even one soldier, willing to listen and act, could change the course of history. As the intrepid dawn soared through the void, leaving the remnants of the Dominion behind, Marcus turned to Solara. "We'll keep fighting. Not just for us, but for everyone who can't fight for themselves." Solara nodded, a faint smile playing across her lips. "Then let the galaxy see that hope exists. Let them see what humanity can do when they refuse to ignore the cries for help." For the first time in centuries, Solara felt free, not just from chains, but from the despair that had held her for so long. And Marcus Hale, the human soldier who had chosen to listen when everyone else ignored the screams, knew that this victory was only the beginning. They had faced impossible odds, defied one of the galaxy's greatest empires, and survived. And in doing so, they had shown the galaxy that humans were not just fragile beings to be dismissed. They were a force to be reckoned with, unyielding, empathetic, and courageous beyond measure. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, but Marcus and Solara were ready. The Dominion might rise again, new enemies might emerge, but one truth remained: humans never give up. Humans never ignore the cries for help. Humans act, survive, and inspire change, no matter the odds. And in that moment, Marcus Hale understood fully that the galaxy had witnessed the beginning of a new era, an era where courage, empathy, and determination could reshape the universe, one human at a time. They had listened, they had acted, and the galaxy would never be the same again.